Hey folks, I'm running behind the power curve here. What's going on? Good morning. Let's see if Tommy Boy 9 checks in with us. Looks like they had a little early wake-up call this morning. Let's roll through here. Where we at? A little early wake-up for them down there in his area. A little bit of shaking going on, I guess. Earthquake just outside of Knoxville, it looks like. Felt as far away as Atlanta, but tiny on the magnitude scale. But the way soils and everything work feels a little different depending on what the that's like. It's Tommy Boy. Where's my side chat at? See if he survived unscathed. He may not even noticed. You never know.
Hey, if you live in the Southeast and you're an early riser, you might have
Where you at over there?
A little something, or maybe you were asleep and you were jostled awake. There was actually an earthquake. It was in East Tennessee. It wasn't terribly strong. We're talking a 4.4 magnitude, but that's enough that you can feel it pretty far away. There were a lot of people in Atlanta, including myself, that felt this as I was getting ready for work in the morning. This is the strongest earthquake that we've had in that general vicinity in Tennessee.
My problem, Weather Channel. Problem loading there. Hey, yeah, Tommy Boy's in the side chat. What's up? Did you feel that, Tommy? Theodore Underhill, good morning. How's it going? But it doesn't look like it was very damaging or anything like that. So I have to wait another day, Tommy Boy, for things to get bad. Things aren't going to collapse on top of you just yet.
Since 1973, there was one that was a 4.7 back then. So this is kind of a big deal for the Southeast. We don't get earthquakes down here too often. A lot of people felt it. Again, it happened at about 4:15 a.m. And there was an aftershock not too long after, about 15 to 20 minutes later, that was a little bit weaker.
A fun morning down there for you, huh, Tommy Boy? But yeah, he pretty much said it all, I believe. Yeah. Pause there. But a little bit of shaking going on out there for you. If you weren't prepared, you are now. No pictures fell, no shake or anything, right? And depending on how close, sometimes it'll feel more like a sonic boom depending on how close you are. Remember when I was a kid, we had one out there, and it was just like it felt like a sonic boom, like or somebody had a, I don't know how's it, but it wasn't like a shaking like if you have in some of them. It's more like a one-time hit, and then without much shaking to it that we had in the past. But there was also a large earthquake in the Atlantic yesterday. Maybe it was Tuesday evening, but it was in the South Atlantic that they had a pretty large earthquake. It was like a 7.0 or something, but it was way down by the Arctic, I believe. Oh, Theodore, you down there with Tommy Boy too? Right? Good times. We're dragging in all kinds of Southerners into this thing. We're going to be overrun before too long. Yeah, with mountain ranges and stuff like that, it really can break up, different valleys. We've had earthquakes right across the same valley, but the way the plates run and under the earth, you can be on, we could see where everybody else was saying they felt an earthquake, and we didn't feel nothing either. It's just kind of the way it is. Sometimes it's hit and miss how depending on the size of them and how they hit and how deep they are. There's so many factors that go into how you feel them as to the actual effects on the earth, I guess you'd say. Weather looks like it's moving mostly out west with the snow in the Rockies there. Look like a good time. We're planning on going skiing out there. But no drastic weather, it doesn't seem like, in the news for right now. The earthquake was the top line on the Weather Channel even. So everybody just normal weather kicking in. Nothing unusual this time of year, especially. If you're not ready for what you're getting, you might want to move. You can't handle the weather that's coming at you today, it looks like. Oh, Theodore, you're right there on the Tennessee, North Carolina. We're right on. I grew up in those neck of the woods too. Yeah, you guys got slammed with the snow, didn't you? Or depending on which side of the mountain you were, back home they got like 2 feet. They were having a good time last week, over the weekend. But are we going to have a government shutdown? Was in the news yesterday. They're arguing over this border wall thing, and well, you think you'd have to shut it down when you are 22 trillion in debt and whatnot, but it doesn't seem to be making any headway. We saw that that can got kicked down the road. There you go, Tommy boy. It looks like the Dow's up for 300 at the open. If you're ready. But interestingly enough, Zero Hedge had a good article talking about it's down there in your links. Debt nears 22 trillion. Another financial crisis looms. And Time Boy is well prepared, as he documents every time, getting on here bragging about his latest mail delivery. But this seems to continue to be ignored as no big deal, which I guess is potentially be true in that it doesn't affect the higher level. It just affects us at the lower level as far as inflation and the value of your work goes, because they can just write IOUs and put digits on a computer forever, it looks like, without facing any consequences. But rapidly expanding debt, I'm surprised this number is under 22 trillion. I would imagine when some accounting happens, you know how it happens. It's like every 6 months or so they do some reaccounting, and it jumps almost $1 billion of new debt that they didn't account for, 500 billion or something crazy. But going on down here, this article. Who's this written by? This is the Economic Collapse blog. Okay, personal opinions will be inserted, I'm sure. He starts off, this is a horrifying national crisis, and yet nothing is being done about it. It's true. Nothing is being done. They figured out how to rig the system. When Barack Obama entered the White House in January of 2008, the U.S. debt was 10.6 trillion. So we've doubled the debt in 10 years. Nothing. What's the worst that could happen, right? And it's only going to exponentially get worse. Needless to say, it doesn't take a math genius to figure out that we've been adding an average of more than $1 trillion a year to the national debt for more than a decade. But it's, instead of getting our appetite for debt under control, Congress is actually accelerating our spending. Yes, they are. But I mean, we've talked about every budget request out there, and they all tend to go up. In particular, with supposed what they call defense spending, but is just a money sink for the military-industrial complex. We've talked about that regularly. Deputy head of the IMF just said that he sees storm clouds building for the next global financial crisis. These clouds are gathering despite the world financial system being unprepared for another downturn. Deputy head of the International Monetary Fund warned. Right? David Lipton. He's the deputy managing director of the IMF. You got to figure how big is the bureaucracy of the IMF? Because the IMF just operates on the good intentions of the world banks, right? I mean, it's not. I mean, how big is that organization? I'd be interested. I mean, the bureaucracy sounds like it's huge. This guy's a first deputy managing director. So that means there's probably a second or a first or a primary, and then there's operations. You can only imagine the bureaucracy is tremendous just to operate a computer and put digits in it. I mean, really, what do they do? But said that the crisis prevention is incomplete, more than a decade on from the last meltdown. Quoted again here, as we have put it, fix the roof while the sun shines. But like many of you, I see storm clouds building and fear the work of crisis prevention is incomplete. Yeah, burn them down. Burn the banks down before they burn us down is about the best solution, right? Janet Yellen is also warning we could have another financial crisis with her design, like she didn't have a hand in it, right? She says, I think things have improved, but then I think there are gigantic holes in the system. The tools that are available to deal with emerging problems are not great in the United States. That's because the banks don't have enough control. They want full control. Yellen cited leveraged loans as an area of concern, something also mentioned by the current Fed leadership. She said regulators can only address such problems as individual banks, not throughout the financial system. Former Fed chair, now a scholar at Brookings Institution, said there remains an agenda of unfinished regulation. The big regulation. I'm not sure we're working on those things in the way we should, and then there remain holes, and then there's regulatory pushback. So I do worry that we could have another financial crisis. It's almost a guarantee. You've doubled your debt in 10 years. How could it not go bad? See what's going on in the side chat real quick. See, nobody else chat. Oh, Barry Wood checking in. Hey, good morning, Barry. Bug Out Bubba's with us. Hey, y'all. He says yens. Are you a yens? Depends on where you're at. Which side of the mountain up there, I guess. $5 billion needed for the wall, but give Iran $150 billion. Right, Tommy boy? I think the $5 billion is just to get it started this year. I think the overall price tag is going to be tremendously greater than that if they actually do put it in place, which I'm still not convinced they will. And still, I'm not sure it's necessarily needed. But that's a separate issue. It's more like when you go to the doctor for, I don't know, pick your disease. But, you've got a cold and you've got a cough and your nose is running. They give you a drug for a runny nose and they don't treat what actually is, your weakening immune system or anything like that. And the drug they give you also creates a side effect of, whatever, tiredness or something else, or sleepiness, or, do not drive vehicles with taking this drug. And the wall is the same type of thing. It's not dealing with the real problems. It's just treatment for one side effect of the bigger disease, which mass migrations is a side effect of bigger problems in the world, not the problem itself. Um, but anyway. Moving on here. So what can be done? Next section. Well, Texas hedge fund manager Kyle Bass wants $1 trillion in new infrastructure spending. Yeah, that'll kickstart the economy. Jobs, right? As they have robots start doing more and more. That sounds nice, but we are already adding more than $1 trillion of debt every year. If we wanted to spend $1 trillion fixing our crumbling infrastructure, where is that money going to come from? We have been, it's just digits on a computer, just make it up. We have been spending far, far more money than we have been bringing in, and that has been propping up our economy for quite some time now. And China and some other people aren't going to deal with that much longer either. That's the thing we haven't gotten to yet here is the debt is bought and on the backs of other countries, and they're not happy with that. They're not going to put up with it much longer. But we are progressively making our long-term problems much worse, and there's no way that we can sustain this Ponzi scheme for much longer. And it isn't just the national debt that is a massive problem. U.S. consumers have more than $13 trillion in debt, and new reporters discovered that credit card debt continues to surge to new heights. Americans are carrying a record amount of credit card debt. According to a new study, the average American family has about $7,000 in revolving debt compared to $6,081 this time last year. And as interest rates rise, so will those monthly payments to service these debts. But interestingly, we saw that the 10-year bond was down significantly, so that'll help that out in the short term. This year's report focused on revolving debt that was carried month to month because it is more of an accurate indicator of hardship. Credit card debt is the stain on millions of Americans' finances that doesn't scrub off easily. Right. Okay. I think we all know. High interest rates combined with expenses that continue to outweigh income mean that some households are unable to fully rid themselves of debt and, in fact, continue to take on more. Right. So there's no backstop for any of this between you got credit card debt, school debt, secured debt. The mortgage deal is not probably, I mean, we have to look more into mortgages with the low interest rates on housing. It's been a lot more affordable, but it's also put people, I guess, in a situation where they've gotten more than they needed. It's not a mortgage of what they've gotten more than they needed, I guess, type of thing. That's going to potentially cause problems in the future. But this looks like the last section here. Where did I leave off at? We're a society that's absolutely addicted to cheap debt, but now interest rates are going up, and this is going to cause some enormous financial problems. Our world has never seen anything like the debt bubble that we are facing right now, and most of that debt was accumulated when interest rates were low. The system simply cannot handle higher interest rates at this point. And according to Michael Pinto, a worldwide depression is coming like we've never seen before. And the quotes here, unfortunately, a worldwide depression is coming like we've never seen because we have never before had so much debt sit on top of artificially depressed interest rates. The hubris and arrogance of central banks to take that away, they are way too late in doing so, and they think they can do this with impunity. They are dead wrong. The central banks have always caused recessions. We are heading to a global depression. The central banks, there's the key tell. The causer of all pain and iniquity, right? Yeah, there's lots of problems with not only the central banking, but making money out of nothing is even more so the problem, because it's easy to give out cheap debt when you're not putting any effort into making it. You're not getting the money from anywhere. The inflationary method of doing that makes it much more difficult. It's not like in the old days where, yeah, they inflated the currency by taking silver and cutting it with other metals to spread it out and make more of it, causing inflation that way. But people had to work to do that, which caused problems earlier and caused the system to correct itself faster. When you have it just ad infinitum on computers, it's much harder to correct in the natural economy. But if we had made wiser choices, things could have turned out differently, but that didn't happen, right? So that's a good article. Just another warning. It's coming. Hey, we got people checking in here. Roger Wilco, good morning. Billy Bird Outdoors. Rooster Cogburn, 0 credit cards. Good for you, sir. All right, right. It's like a bad movie script, says Barry Wood. Yeah, it's like some of the stuff you can't make up, right? Any of you folks, other folks out there, feel the earthquake this morning down by Tommy's neck of the woods? Tommy said he didn't feel it. But going along with the debt and talking about the cheapness of the debt, we're talking about the 10-year yield in particular, how it's dropped to keep some of that debt cheap. But the problem is the bond yield inversion curve. And we talk about that a lot, I guess you'd say, but Dick Morris of our people. But there's a good video that Mike Maloney did yesterday about what they aren't telling you about the yield curve, and he breaks it down better than any video I've seen so far, showing you these graphs on how the yield curve in the past has worked in comparison with the stock market and the inversions that have happened in the past, and like how some people are trying to blow this off like it'll correct itself, but this is in your links below in the description box, this video to go check out. And for everybody that's here now, let me drop it in the side chat. But this is I don't know, the best way I've seen it explained. And
so there's some fallen
trees,
wood chippers going, and chainsaws.
Be well served to share this or watch it and learn how to explain it in similar terms. But these graphs are really good.
I wanted to show you, we've been following
just follow along, just so if
quite some time. This is a very, very important indicator on what the future of the economy is. There's something called bond vigilantes. Bond investors tend to be sort of accurate in their herding patterns, their group prediction. It'll be much easier if I go over to the dynamic yield curve that we have been following on stock charts and show everybody once again. And for anybody new, I'm going to define everything. So if you understand the definitions, just hang in there with me for a second. But this blue line, this is the S&P 500 index. So it's the stock market's performance. And you see this incredible rise since the global financial crisis of 2008. This is the NASDAQ crash and so on of 2000. And this is the real estate bubble in here. And but the yield curve predicts when the stock market is about to crash. And here's the neat thing. On this chart, you can grab this little line and you can sweep it across the S&P 500, the stock market, and you can watch the yield curve. Now, the yield is the amount that you're getting paid for loaning the government your currency for 30 years, or for 20 years, 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, 2 years, and 3 months. Now, somebody that loans the government currency for 30 years is usually not that sensitive or nervous over the short term. They're betting on the long term. And so they
tend to sort of ignore, is there going to be a dip next month? Or is there going to be a dip next year? Are we in for a short-term crash or pullback? But they're loaning their currency for a very long period of time. And so if everything seems safe, the government doesn't have to pay investors very much to borrow their currency for 3 months or 2 years, but somebody loaning it to them for 30 years wants to get paid more. However, if it looks like something could happen in the economy that is bad in the short term, these people that are investing in these bonds hold back until the government offers higher and higher and higher levels of interest. And there are certain points in time where this inverts, where the short-term investors are demanding a higher level of interest to be able to loan their currency to the US government than the long-term investors. And what's interesting here, this starts back in about 1998. So this is shortly after the long-term capital management crisis and the Russian bond default. These were events that almost brought down the world economy. And you can see here that the yield curve is sort of recovering from a flattening, where they're all sort of the same, or an inversion, where short-term yields are higher. But it's unusual to see it like this. And if I take this line here and start sweeping it across, you can see that this starts to invert. It goes flat, and then just before the crash, short-term rates are higher than long-term rates. There's a full inversion right there. And then the crash happens. So this predicted the crash perfectly. And we get back into a positive yield curve. This is a normal yield curve. Now you're going to see the 30-year freeze, and that's because Alan Greenspan eliminated the 30-year. So actually, the last section of that line from the 20-year to the 30-year shouldn't exist. So just ignore that as part of the yield curve. And then we go into the real estate bubble, and the stock market starts doing well, and we've got a positive curve, and it goes up and up and up, but then it starts flattening. For some reason, in 2006 and 7, bond investors loaning their currency to the US government for the short term got really nervous. And this was when Ben Bernanke and everybody else was reassuring us that everything was great in the economy, nothing to worry about. But this is an inversion right here. And then just a few months later, we have a stock market crash, and it goes back into a positive curve. Now you're going to notice that the short end of the yield curve, the 3-month, just gets stuck down at 0.25%. That's because the Fed pegged it there. They buy as many treasury bonds that are 3-month treasury bonds to keep it within a certain range of percentage, and they wanted it at 0.25%. And then we've got a nice positive yield curve, but the bottom end again is being manipulated by the Fed. And then the Fed wants to raise interest rates. They stop their QE programs, and now they're trying to normalize their.
All right, so he goes into the rest of it there. It's really good, but he explains it there at the first couple crashes and goes on. But it's really good just to help you get your head wrapped around what's going on with that and watching that as it goes, and where you're inverted on the short term. Interest rates are inverted this week or last week, so we're getting closer to more pain out there in the economy for sure, and something to just keep an eye on, just so ahead of trends and you can see what's coming. Not that I'm invested deliberately, at least, like we talk about all the time. Most of us have unwillful exposure through mandatory withholdings, but to willfully put your money in the stock market, it seems like you might as well just go to Vegas and gamble while you're at it. Hey, Wes S., good morning. What's going on? See, we got people keeping metal, stacking silver. Wes S. is going to turn on your driver's side airbag. Why don't you turn it off? Oh, you keep saying crash. Oh, is that what you're talking about? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's a different type of crash. And if we're well positioned well enough, I mean, it won't really bother most of us to a large degree, but it just depends on how it affects your area as well. The question is, how long can the clowns keep the circus afloat, right, Theodore? And it's not only that, I've come to the conclusion that it's very, very dependent upon the faith of the American people in their system. As long as they can keep the majority of the people complacent and happy, I guess you'd say, as long as people have their iPhones and aren't just uncomfortable and they can access Netflix, people are going to continue to prop up the system with their own labor. And like you said, people getting debt and credit card debt and all those things that feed it. When people start cutting away from that and just dropping it and losing the faith in the system and the dollar in particular, more people get into bartering and things like that. That's when the system could really see problems. That's what it's all based upon. They can keep it afloat as long as there's people in there to pull and access currency from. Hey, Killdale Survival's with us. Good morning. Billy Bird says not much longer. At least the stock market side, it would seem to be not much longer. The currency side, the dollar itself, it's hard to tell. Because we know that the foreign governments and the oil dollars, that seems like it's on its last leg. But again, how much longer will the American people help prop up the dollar? Tito's been waiting for the collapse for 25 years. It's late. Right. Poverty is an old thing for those parts of the country. It's like they talk about the first stock market crash of 29 and stuff. It's like they didn't even notice because it didn't affect them, you know? They didn't have any exposure to that type of world, which is kind of a better way to live in a lot of respects. But our great-grandparents and stuff didn't feel the previous crashes while we're all kind of exposed to the new ones. So that's going on. Just keeping it in the news. We had that attack out there in France. France has got all kinds of stuff going on. Europe in general. Protests spreading throughout the continent. Germany, the Netherlands. Everybody's sick and tired of getting thrown under the bus for global government. People seem to be rising up a little bit. America would be smart to follow suit. We'll see how far that gets. But what else is going on anybody else's way? Billy Bird says the bad part is it will not just be an economic collapse. Right. If the dollar itself goes down, it'll be, at the level of societies, countries. And depending on how much warfare there is based around it, could get very drastic. So that was the main topic of the day. Tommy Boy said he didn't feel no earthquake, so we'll just write it off as fake news, I guess, that it didn't happen out there in Tennessee. The Brexit thing's on its last leg. The British are going to riot, which would be humorous to see, but good on them. If May fails them, in their task to separate themselves. Lots of financial stuff out there. Hey, Iron Witch, good morning. Revolution will not be televised. Yeah, the power might be out. Might be why, right? Right. More fuel for the fire in France, right, Rooster? It's more quit letting just random migration occur, forcefully bringing people into our country so they can kill us. Yeah, people are getting sick and tired of that. You don't hear about a lot. The protests in Germany and stuff get muted when they've been out there protesting against some of that stuff, but you never makes the news at a large level. They suppress a lot of that, just like these Paris riots. In the U.S. news, it's pretty much mute. And like we talked about last week, it seems to be this time of year they always want to put out good news. They want everybody to go out and spend and get their Christmas money spent instead of worrying about problems, because you got to boost that economy, right? Seems to be the agenda. Keep everybody placated and just singing kumbaya so that they go out and shop more and everything else. Theodore, nobody is talking about what an EU collapse will do globally. There will be a far felt effects globally. Oh, no doubt. Yeah, any type of because the EU, remember, we got to remind people the EU is primarily an economic compact. It's not a it's not a union. It's not supposed to be. It's not designed to be a union like what we have. A union of states. They were an economic union that grew into a bigger government because of laziness, I guess, or whatever for the reason. But if the EU collapses, there's economic tentacles that go into all kinds of. I mean, the EU currency, the euro, and everything that collapsed. Surely will affect. Hey, Aaron Cox, good morning. What's going on? How you doing? They want to be able to watch it on their 5G networks, Aaron. They might be able to just watch out their front window. If it's like we talk about these Paris riots, people have got to get smart and take the fight where it belongs to their front doors. Like the British, when they were doing a lot of their protesting, they were in Westminster Abbey. They were where the problem is. Just roaming down the middle of the streets is not doing anything to anybody, is not sending a message, is not effective. You have to go to where the problems are. If you're gonna, setting cars on fire on the street is not the problem. You're not dealing with the people responsible. It's like you see these protests over police brutality. If you encircle the cop station, encircle the location of where they're at. That's who you're protesting. Just roaming down any random street is not doing anybody any good. It's not the problem. My thoughts. Go to where the problem is, not just random streets and up and down, causing problems for everybody else, and who are definitely not going to join your cause when you're just randomly roaming the area and causing problems, and allowing that also allows a lot of the infiltrators to come in there and cause problems by breaking windows and everything else. When The anti-capitalist types get all frustrated with Starbucks. They can break into the Starbucks or whatever. Go to the source of the problem. If you're going to protest, and make it their problem. About the best way I can say it, I guess. But if you think we're past protesting, then there's other things that have to be done. Dad on YouTube's with us. Good morning. High Pocket. Hey, how you doing, High Pocket? Haven't seen you in a while. I know you had to move back to SoCal, right? That sucks. Totally off subject. Has any followed the story about mud floods? Tartaria? I'm not familiar with Tartaria. What is that? And I'm not sure what you speak. The mud flows. The mud flows they had after the rains or after the fires. We covered some of that last week in some of those burn areas, but I'm not sure what it is you speak of exactly. Dad on YouTube. Burning cars in the street is not the answer. You were all hopeful, huh? Wes says Brexit is doomed to fail. The EU refuses to give up the back door of control. Right. Yeah, and May is doing the bidding of the EU controllers in Germany, basically. Germany basically runs the EU economically. But if it's going to fail because the leaders let it fail. Brexit should work if they would do the will of the people. There's lots of discontent in Parliament over there. Iron Witch, bring good point. I think the idea of the terror attack in France is very convenient for the French government to declare martial law and shut down the Yellow Vest. Well, they haven't played that card yet, but also that fuels the fire of the protest itself, because a lot of what they're protesting is the mass importation of people who want to kill them, basically. So it gives more fuel to the fire of the protesters as well when they have that happen. Like, hey, look, this is what we're against, and it's just it's happening at random. And the French people can't defend themselves, right? They have extreme gun control. They're not able to defend themselves, and the police can't be everywhere. So there we are. Hey, Saints and Sappers, what's going on? One each, you made it. Hey, what are you doing up? Or I guess you're always up. I don't think Saints and Sappers ever sleeps. I think he has two people running it, that checking on his account. I think is the issue. See if the Dow is still up for Tommy Boy's amusement. Somehow they think that this is all based upon this trade deal, but I'm telling you, it's still based on these interest rates over here, where the 30 years 2-point cheap money. But look at that inverted flattening yield curve. Weaponized immigration, exactly, Theodore, and it's worldwide now. And there's different ideas as to why, but that's definitely causing a lot of the issues. Where's my inverted curve? New Jersey banned high-capacity mags yesterday, and even more so, Iron Witch, New Jersey State Police came out and said they weren't beyond going door to door to confiscate them. That's even more concerning. You can make all the stupid laws you want, but putting them in force and going in and enforcing them is the hard part. Exactly, yeah. Hey, Midwest Prepper, what's going on? Good morning. It is a huge bubble, right? You missed all the debt bubble talk. That there's a video link below about the bond yield inversion curve that Mike Maloney did yesterday. That's really good if you need some help explaining it. But yeah, the stupid laws. So yeah, just to show you the flattening of the yield curve last month. This is this light blue line, and there's the dark blue line, a little flatter. It is happening. As the Ron Paul meme says, it's happening. It's right there. It's just a matter of what it really means. Midwest Prepper just got pre-approved for an unbelievable amount. Let me tell you. Yeah, they're making unbelievable offers to everybody. That's too good to be true, right? Because they have to keep it going. You're pre-approved. Right, Rooster, the California banned high-capacity magazines too. Yeah, but New Jersey is a much smaller state, much easier to control, I think, and much more. They have a much wider complicit population, I think. You know, California still has state of Jefferson to contend with. They would have difficulty doing what they're trying to do in New Jersey. ZPD Survival, good morning. You're always working. I'm surprised you're not already working already. 1.2 million was your pre-approval, Midwest? I haven't been pre-approved for that. I feel like a slacker. But yeah, that that New Jersey story didn't make the rounds. Was it in Breitbart where that high capacity ban article was? But the New Jersey police stay in. It wasn't beyond the realm of possibility of going door to door to confiscate them. That was the real eye raiser. It's going to be sad for all those feel good conservatives that live in New Jersey that commute to New York and think they're just going to wait till the system fixes itself, or they'll vote a little harder to help the system correct itself. Could be bad for them. There's not, it's not linked on the Drudge. It doesn't look like. There's an interesting armed robbery victim calls 911 8 times, waits 3 hours for the cops. Whenever you need the police, they're only an hour away. Yeah, that magazine ban story was somewhere around here. I don't know. That's linked still. And Zero Hedge puts out so much content you can't find what you're looking for half the time. Dad's selling a house near Joint Base Andrews. Isn't that where the hot musket's going on, Dad, right? That whole boondoggle. So you're down there with Rob and Wes S, huh? Right on. Yeah, the housing market always slows down in the winter too, though. So it's not, we won't fully see how bad it is until spring, I think, when things don't bounce back. That's the key, I guess. The months slow down in the winter's expected, but the deep state wants your guns on the Zero Hedge there. This probably, I don't know if it ties into New Jersey, maybe. Or is it just fear mongering like everything else? Just to make you scared enough to think that they want them. Because really, can't they get around them at this point? Because they've pretty much indoctrinated most of the public to where they won't use them. That's the more scary part. Midwest, I can barely afford 300,000, a little less for 1.2 million, right? Yeah, maybe 30,000. Oh, we got lots of people checking your slave name. Hey, good morning. How you doing? Yeah, load up the illegals with, well, more so they work and put taxes into the system. They keep that revolving door going. The average illegal immigrant doesn't get loaded up with a whole lot of credit card debt and stuff until they're well established. So it takes a couple decades, but I guess it's long term. Plus, they have a lot more kids, which get put in the system, which causes more rotational debt. Wes, you did a doomer porn video yesterday. You pulled it down. I must have missed it. I saw one of your videos yesterday, though. I thought Dad on YouTube did one last night, in the middle of the night. That was good. I'm trying to remember what the subject was now, but I remember watching it. All right, folks, we're not going to beat this dead horse anymore. Get ready to punch out of here. Which did everybody see the article earlier in the week? PETA wanted to stop using harmful terms towards animals. Things like "don't beat a dead horse," a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, all that stuff. They wanted people to stop using those terms. Did everybody hear about that? Composting the grid. That was talk about the grid vulnerabilities and stuff Dad was talking about last night. And then the PETA thing too about changing terms. That was funny. PETA's trying to change the way we talk about animals, I guess, or something. But bringing home the bacon was one they wanted you to stop using too, because obviously it talks about murdering pigs. So we'll leave you with that, folks. You guys have a good day. Killing two birds with one stone. Yeah, right. That too. Right, slave. Yeah. Yeah, all kinds of stuff they wanted to change. All right. You guys take it easy. We'll see you back later on in the interwebs here, somewhere on YouTube. I'm sure we'll see you around. Wes S, maybe just change your state of mind in that video and redo it. Maybe it'll just come across better. We'll feel better about it instead of dirty. So y'all have a good day. Thanks for checking in. Live free.